So it looks like it is 2 o'clock. So I will start right in, and anyone else can just join if they would like to. So I'll just make the introductions. And just to note, I can't see the participants if you have questions, but I'm very happy to take questions at the end. So we have about 15 or 20 minutes at the end for any questions that you have during the presentation. So I'll just introduce myself. And thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Louise, and I am a program officer with Young Canada Works at Building Careers in Heritage with the Canadian Museums Association, and also the communications liaison for Young Canada Works with the CMA. So I plan to provide a brief overview of the 2 streams of Young Canada Works that are administered by the CMA, and I'll review how Young Canada Works can benefit your organization, how the program works, its goals, what you can expect as a Young Canada Works employer, and what is expected of you. And before we begin, I would like to note that the presentation is available in both English and in French, so you can select your language options at the bottom of the screen. And the presentation is also being recorded for viewing later. And before I get into the details of Young Canada Works, I would like to acknowledge that the Canadian Museum Association Secretariat is located on the traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe peoples. We extend our appreciation for the opportunity to live and learn on this territory in mutual respect and gratitude. So what is Young Canada Works? Young Canada Works is a federally funded employment program administered annually. It is intended to benefit Canadian youth aged 30 and under by providing short-term employment and by providing work experience that develops skills sought by the heritage and culture sectors. The program also benefits the heritage sector directly by providing funds to museum and other heritage organizations to allow them to hire a Canadian youth for a limited term position of between 6 weeks and 12 months in length. So it's 6 to 16 weeks for one of the streams, and then the longer stream is between 4 months and a year, although it's rarely a full year, unfortunately. So funding is provided through the Department of Canadian Heritage and can be used to cover a percentage of the salary and the mandatory employer costs, such as CCP, associated with the student or intern's wages. The maximum amount of funding and the percentage of the total cost is determined annually by the Department of Canadian Heritage, so it varies from year to year, but it's usually around 85% of wages. So funding is issued by delivery organizations appointed by the Department of Canadian Heritage. So as a Young Canada Works delivery organization, the CMA reviews applications, issues funding offers, reviews forms, issues contracts and payments to its employers. Heritage organizations can apply for funding directly through Young Canada Works through the website, but you are responsible for hiring and supervising your students and interns. And other than the CMA, there are a number of other delivery organizations that you will find through the Young Canada Works website. There's the Fédération des Milieux Documentaires, the Canadian Council of Archives, the Cultural Human Resources Council, and the National Trust. So when you start your application on the YCW website, which DO is going to be one of the questions that you'll have to answer. And if you have any questions on which one would be the best fit for you, please feel free to contact us or any of the other delivery organizations. So just to reiterate, all of the applications are done through the Government of Canada's Young Canada Works website. So if you don't have a profile, it's very easy to just go onto the website and create a profile. If you do have a profile, please continue to use the profile that you already have used in previous years for previous applications, as that just makes it a lot less complicated and easier to find you. But if you do have one or you've created one, you will see this when you log on. And in order to start your application, you just select from your profile, create a new job funding application. So how does Young Canada Works work? So we administer, the Canadian Museums Association administers Young Canada Works in two separate streams. Young Canada Works in heritage organizations and Young Canada Works at building careers in heritage. There are many similarities between the two streams, but there are also important distinctions between them. So they're managed completely separately and applied for separately. So first is the Young Canada Works in heritage organization stream. So this is intended for current secondary students as well as post-secondary students. So it would be in between semesters. The idea is that you have to be a full-time student before the Young Canada Works work term and then be planning to return to school after the work term. While Young Canada Works was in HO was previously a summer-only program, it now can take place any time of year. It used to be a summer program just because that was typically when, say, high school students were free to work, or that used to be the general schedule of university courses, was that students often had the summers off. As people are a little bit more flexible nowadays, the Young Canada Works program has adapted and it can start at any time. It just has to end by March 31st. And the other distinction between Young Canada Works in heritage organizations and Young Canada Works at building careers in heritage is that YCW in HO can be done multiple times. So if you're a high school student, you can do it every summer if you wanted. We do discourage people from returning to the same employer year after year. The goal of the program is to gain new skills and new experiences. So we really encourage people to not rehire the same people year after year. And the second stream is Young Canada Works at building careers in heritage. So this is the longer stream. There we go. This is the longer stream. So it is between 16 weeks. That is the minimum. And we're very careful to ensure that any of the work terms do not go below 16 weeks, just because of the nature of the program and the fact that this is meant to be a more intense sort of skill development program. It's beneficial to both parties if it is 16 weeks or longer. The maximum, again, is 12 months, but it is unlikely that a position could actually last the full 12 months, unfortunately, just because of how the funding cycle works. But I will review the funding cycle closer to the end of the presentation. So just the gist is that this is the longer program. The other distinction is that you have to be a post-secondary graduate in order to participate. However, post-secondary is interpreted fairly widely, so it includes any CEGEP students. If you've graduated CEGEP, if you've done a microcredit, that would also count, a language certificate, as long as they are issued by a recognized post-secondary institution. And for both streams, you have to be 30 years old or younger, a Canadian citizen, a permanent resident, or have refugee status. So those two criteria are very, very firm. So for both streams, you have to be 30 years old or younger, and you have to be a Canadian citizen, permanent resident, or have refugee status. And both the positions for both streams are similar in the type of work that is involved, i.e. it would be things like collections management, educational programming, etc. But the Young Canada Works at building careers in heritage stream typically gives the intern a little bit more responsibility and a little bit more autonomy than the HO stream would give them. In HO, they're typically in a support role rather than designing an exhibition by themselves, for instance, whereas a BCH intern might be tasked with developing an exhibition all by themselves. That's just an example. So what are the benefits of Young Canada Works? So I have here on the slide is a quotation from one of our recent supervisors of a Young Canada Works at Building Careers and Heritage intern. She says, our intern continues to bring ideas about how we might consider beginning to decolonize the Hornby Island Natural History Centre and what it means to build relationships with Indigenous communities. Her ability to make those ideas visible and manifested, both in the layout and in the text of our new exhibition, is nothing short of remarkable. And that was Susan speaking about their intern at the Hornby Island Natural History Centre from last year, so 2021-22, who was helping them develop a new space for their museum after, unfortunately, the former one had been destroyed by fire. So in the Building Careers and Heritage stream, we're very fortunate that we often get to read these sorts of comments about how the interns have impacted the organizations, because we always ask for a narrative report at the end of the work term from both the supervisor and the intern. And we often see comments like this and other ones saying that we could not have gotten project X completed had it not been for this student, that, you know, we'd been having this on our to-do list and we'd never been able to do it until we were able to get this funding and hire this person. So what else will you gain? So as a YCW employer, you'll receive funds that allow you to hire a new short-term employee who can bring a fresh perspective, new ideas, and relevant skills to your organization. You have the ability to start or complete a project that you didn't have the resources to develop previously. You get the opportunity to mentor a young professional, and you're providing someone with the opportunity to develop skills and gain relevant experience to help them with their career development in the heritage sector. Also, this will help to strengthen your own organization, your community, and the heritage sector more generally. And just to note as well, many of our students and interns have gone on to prominent roles in organizations where they worked with Young Canada Works or onto full-time positions at different organizations. For example, for the 2021-22 Building Careers and Heritage year, 36% of our interns reported that they found a full-time position in the heritage sector immediately following their Young Canada Works work term. These experiences with Young Canada Works are often responsible for confirming or developing the passion of the intern or student for museum heritage or art sector work. So what is the role of the Canadian Museums Association with Young Canada Works? Why are we involved? So the Canadian Museums Association has been proud to deliver the Young Canada Works program on behalf of the Department of Canadian Heritage since YCW launched in 1996. Delivery of the program helps the CMA fulfill its mandate to support the Canadian museum sector, just as the CMA represents and advocates for heritage organizations of all sizes and interests. Our YCW employer organizations are equally diverse, from small volunteer-run organizations to larger urban museums, and they could also be found in every province and territory in Canada. And we do have a couple of international internships as well through Building Careers and Heritage. There's only, I think, 2 spots a year for those, though. So again, in our role as a delivery organization, the YCW team reviews applications. We issue the funding offers on the website. We approve selected candidates, approve budgets, make budget updates, and otherwise guide you as the employer through the process from the job funding application until the final payment. And we're here throughout the whole time for any questions you might have on candidate eligibility, on any updates that you need to make to the project, or any other YCW related questions that you might have. We exist in order to support employers while they navigate the Young Canada Works program from beginning to end. And we're always happy to ensure that our students, interns, and employers are having the best possible experience with Young Canada Works. So who is eligible to participate as an employer with Young Canada Works? So as a delivery organization, YCW staff review the eligibility of the organizations that apply for funding. So in order to be eligible to receive funding, an employer organization must have a Canadian heritage mandate, be a financially stable, not-for-profit institution, and not be federally funded. So, for instance, you also can't have a relationship with a federal department, so it can't be affiliated with, for instance, the Department of National Defense, which has some heritage sites under its purview. Ideally, you should also be accessible to the public, either virtually or in person. Eligible organizations are extremely diverse. They include art galleries of all sizes, museums, science centers, artist-run centers, university departments, zoos, aquaria, historical societies, sports halls of fame, cultural centers, municipal heritage departments, and on and on. So what is expected of a Young Canada Works employer? So as a YCW employer, you're responsible for more than just paying your students and interns a salary. You also need to supply them with the tools they need to succeed in their role at your organization and beyond. So consider what actual supplies they will need to fulfill the tasks associated with their position, i.e. any kind of specialized conservation equipment, access to particular databases, any additional training. But also consider the role that you will play in their professional development. So part of the goal of Young Canada Works is to develop skills relevant to the heritage sector and to help participants gain experience and knowledge in order to transition into the workforce more permanently. So as a supervisor, you will act as a mentor to the student or intern and provide them with opportunities to network, learn, and strengthen their abilities. Part of the application process asks you to provide a description of how you will supervise the student or intern in order to ensure that there is someone there to provide support and guidance throughout the entire work term. One of the aspects we value during the application process is ensuring that the position and its tasks will develop skills valued within the heritage sector. So what types of jobs would Young Canada Works be funding? The types of positions funded under YCW are as diverse as the organizations funded. The main requirement of the positions is that they develop skills valued in the heritage sector, with an understanding that museum skills are relevant and transferable to other sectors. So, for instance, abilities in education, communications, research, event planning are all sought after within and beyond the museum sector. Heritage work includes many diverse skill sets, including specialized skills in archives, conservation science, and collections management, but also equally skills in social media, communications, and education. You need to be tour guides and fundraising are also highly sought after. So when we review applications, we're looking for roles that will develop tasks that are sought after in the museum profession specifically. Less likely to be funded are positions which focus on, say, like food preparation or purely cash handling or any sort of like a maintenance position. So they should be skills that are sought after and desirable in the museum community. Oops. So who are Young Canada Works students and interns? So as already mentioned, the bare eligibility requirements are that they are students or post-secondary graduates with who are 30 years old or younger, who are Canadian citizens, permanent residents, or people who have refugee status with Canada. So for Young Canada Works, in heritage organizations, these will be current secondary students or post-secondary students. They can have a degree, but they would be going into another degree. So these people that you are considering, they may not consider themselves museum professionals. They may not have even considered a career in museums, but they might see your position and believe that that is something they're interested in. And for BCH, it's the same. We do have so many students and interns that come to us who don't have a background in museum studies. A lot of people have come from very diverse backgrounds, some policing, psychology, archaeology is, I guess, clearly linked, but it's very diverse, the people who are attracted to Young Canada Works positions and who can benefit from them. So candidates apply through the Young Canada Works website. So once you've been offered funding and you accept the funding, the position gets posted and there will be a job poster on the YCW website. But you can also search the website for people you might be interested in filling the position. But additionally, we strongly encourage you to search very widely, to advertise on, say, your own website, on your social media, on your local university job board, with your provincial museum association job board. The CMA also has a job board. So the more widely you post and advertise the job, the more likely you're going to get someone who is a good fit for your position and your organization. So one of the requirements is that you have to do an open recruitment and consider as many applicants as possible, just to make it fair. So it's, as mentioned earlier as well, it is discouraged to employ someone who has been affiliated with your organization in the past, so a previous employee, and especially for building careers and heritage, we also discourage you from rehiring the same intern. And just to note as well, in terms of your search for a candidate, you can look outside your community. We do offer reimbursements for travel for the students and interns if they have to travel more than 125 kilometers. We will reimburse the costs of traveling to and from their work destination. So that makes it a little bit easier for people who may, live not in a larger city, in an urban center, to attract candidates for their position. And we also, through Canadian Heritage, are able to offer funding to assist with accessibility issues. So if someone has a vision issue and needs special computer equipment or any other sorts of accommodations that would need to be made, there are also opportunities through Canadian Heritage to support that. So how to get started. So if you don't have a YCW profile already, as mentioned earlier, it's very easy to start. So you go to the sign up page on Young Canada Works. If you have already a profile, as I do, you just hit sign in. And if you don't, you just sign up, you input your information, and away you go. So on the application, we also ask for a lot of details about the position and your plans for it. This is to ensure that you have given a lot of thought to the experience that you're giving to the Young Canada Works student or intern. So the application format varies slightly between the two streams just because of the differences between them, but you will have an opportunity for both streams to include details on the position's budget. So for instance, the hourly wage, and we do have a wage guide as well on the CMA website for Young Canada Works to provide all the other expected details, like how many hours per week. We also ask that you set out a plan for supervision and mentorship, especially with the Building Careers and Heritage stream. We want to see that you have a plan to support them after the internship to help them find work. So the application is essentially an opportunity for you to show us that you've considered every single detail of the experience and that the work will be mutually beneficial to your organization as well as to the student or intern. And now on to the very last slide, the timeline that I mentioned earlier. So every year, the applications open late in the 1 year. So this year it is opening tomorrow, so November 16th. The applications are due January 20th. So the CMA has a screening and review process that typically takes a couple of months from the application deadline in order to properly evaluate and score all the applications. for both YCW in HO and YCW at Building Careers and Heritage, applications that are rated highest will be funded first. So those are offered funding because I don't want to go into too much detail because it's not particularly interesting, but we have two streams of funding. So we have core funding, which is guaranteed annually. So all of the first applications that are funded through core funding. And that's why they are notified earlier and they can start earlier. Unfortunately, supplemental funding, we do not learn about it until slightly later. So some positions have to start later. So you might want to consider that as well when you're planning your project, just having a realistic sense of start dates and end dates. So the end dates for all positions has to be March 31st. So it'll be March 31st of 2024. But the start date can be anytime from, I'd say, July up until December. So yeah, that is all. And I am very happy to take any questions. I'm just going to unmute.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Do you want us to write them in the chat, or is it okay just to do this orally?
No, yeah. If you just to put your hand up, it looks like Catherine also has a question. So if you want to put your hand up or just speak. So yes, please go ahead.
My first question is in regards to the age categories. So when you say 30 or under, is that at the beginning of the program? Like, so when we put the application in, so if the person happened to turn 31 during the period of time after they were hired, would they still qualify?
Yes, they would. So they have to be 30 as of the start date. So if they turn
start date of funding.
The start date of their work term.
Okay. The second question I have is in regards to both programs. If we have a student, and I didn't realize we had to hire somebody new. We were looking at doing somebody else. But under the circumstance where we had last year with some funding, the student actually worked for us while they were going to school. Would that only apply in the building careers category, or could we do that during the heritage organization stream too?
So
Okay.
were they working full time?
No, they were working part-time while they were going to school.
Okay.
And then they were working full-time during they were on a co-op program. And so, but during the period of time when they were available, like on weekends, and they were doing work for us too. This was another program, I apologize, I'm confusing things up, but they worked for almost 10 months.
So our work terms are, so the HO work term is shorter. So that is for people who haven't yet graduated. So they couldn't work for 10 months in HO.
Okay.
And we do prioritize full-time. So, you can certainly, I think you can do HO if you're going to school full-time, but it's not really, they would have to be working full-time. So if they were willing to do that, like we've had people still doing their MAs, for instance, during a building careers and heritage work term. But typically that's not, it's not like 30 hours of classwork.
Okay, so in building careers, because it's between 4 and 12 months, what if they were to work from April to the beginning of September full-time, and then they wanted to work part-time through the rest of the term?
That would be sort of a case-by-case issue. So, if someone has to reduce their work hours for any reason, we can be flexible if there's an issue that comes up. But it would be good to know that ahead of time, I suppose. But if we can't, because we do prioritize full-time employees. But April would probably be too early for a position to start, just because of the timeline for funding.
Okay. So you're thinking July is the earliest you might receive
Um,
funding?
It typically, yes, I wouldn't bet on it becoming available earlier. It's much earlier. I would say April would be too early to anticipate a start.
So if we were willing to pay for that person up till the funding time, would that be acceptable?
Well, then they would be already working at your organization. So would you be having an open recruitment?
Whatever, if you want us to do an open recruitment, we can certainly do that. And then advise you that we're doing it prior, like we might look in January for somebody to come and help out at the museum, with a start date, say, of April. But I mean, I think we're financially in a position where we'd be able to offer somebody, a modest salary, as long as we knew, there's potential for funding at the end of the day.
Um, I mean, that would be a case by case
Yeah.
thing, but you shouldn't be offering it to somebody who's already working at your organization.
Yeah. Well, or has worked there. Yeah. Okay. Well, those are all my questions. Thank you very much.
Okay. If you do have any more questions, please feel free to email me. I'll put my personal email in the chat, and the YCW email. I think I see Cynthia has a question, or hang on. Let me just add this. Oh. And I see somebody else has a question.
I think, was it me next? I'm not sure.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I had a question about core funding. I didn't realize this was an option. So that's what you said, that a position would reoccur each year?
No.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's okay. So no, core funding, Young Canada Works has two separate funding envelopes. So any positions funded through the core funding envelope they would be getting the funding offer earlier. So, but that's not all of the positions. So just as a planning for when your start date would be, don't anticipate that it could start in, say, like May or June.
Okay, so sorry, the core funding is something from your perspective, not a program that we are applying for. Okay.
No, so Young Canada Works is funded through I didn't want to get too much into the specifics of it.
Sorry.
Okay. Oh, that's okay. No, so we have core funding, which is available annually. So that's a guaranteed amount. So we know we can always fund a certain amount of positions, but we don't know about the second. So we get it in two sort of envelopes. So the second one for BCH is the larger, usually, not always. That's why it's never guaranteed.
Okay.
So that's just to say, when you're planning your start date, just be realistic that an April start date is probably not a guarantee.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. Unfortunately, no, it would be nice if we could offer organizations guaranteed annual funding, but you have to apply annually.
And sorry, one last thing. And can you apply for both? I mean, can you apply for multiple positions? Absolutely,
yeah. You can apply for, really as many positions as you want, but you would just need to justify. So if you were asking, for instance, for 5 of the same position, you would just need to tell us why you need 5 people in that position. But you can certainly apply for, like, if you have 4 different positions that are all different. Yeah, you can definitely do that. You can apply for both streams. They should be separate. They shouldn't be the same job in BCH and HO. There should definitely be a distinction if you are applying for both streams.
Okay.
But yeah, you can definitely have funding from Building Careers and Heritage as well as HO in the same program year.
Excellent.
And you could also apply through different delivery organizations. So really for you, the delivery organization is just to see which one is a close fit for your organization or the job. There's a lot of overlap. So like in the Canadian Museums Association will fund an archive position. It's not that because there's an organization out there that deals with archives, the Canadian Council for Archives. That doesn't mean we don't also have archives positions, so it's quite flexible.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. It looks like Colin has a question.
Yeah, earlier on in your presentation, you spoke about up to 85% of the salary would be covered.
It's an example of what has often been used.
Is that 85% based on meeting all the criterias that you've set out? Like, so for instance, if we were to hire someone that had a language other than English, or we hired somebody that was Indigenous, or we hired somebody that had a disability, would that, is that what you're looking for in order to reach that 85% threshold?
No, so the percentage of salary covered is set by Canadian heritage.
Mm-hmm.
So it applies to all. So let's say they said 50%, then that would mean that for all of the positions. So it doesn't matter, what criteria are met. Like it doesn't really have anything to do with that. That's just, so Canadian heritage sets the maximum percentage that we can fund. And that's of the salary and the mandatory employer cost. So it doesn't, that's the only thing that Young Canada Works funds. So we don't, for instance, cover the costs of like any in-kind contributions or the orientation.
Oh, so there's no criteria. It's just once we do our application, you'll decide, somewhere between 50 and 85% what the funding would be.
Well, we're just guided by what Canadian Heritage says.
Okay.
So if they say 85, then that is the maximum.
Okay.
If they say 75, it's 75.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Were there any other questions? It looks like David has a question.
Sorry, that's me. I'm pretending to be David.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't entirely clear on when we could advertise for the position. If we have to wait for the funding to be approved, and we hear that in late April, is that when we can start advertising, or can we start looking for suitable candidates prior to that, on the condition, of course, that the whole project is contingent on funding approval?
That is an excellent question. So you yourself, you can certainly start looking whenever you want in your own channels. So it won't go up onto the Young Canada Works website until all of the funding has been confirmed. But yes, you can start searching. I mean, I wouldn't hire anyone.
No.
But yes, yeah, you can start advertising. I wouldn't, as long as it's clear that it's not guaranteed, unless you are planning to fund it regardless of the funding that you get from Young Canada Works, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Thanks very much.
Okay, perfect. And I see someone else has a question. Sylvia? Did I unmute you okay?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hello.
So my question is, I'm new into this position within the last year, and prior to being here, we were successful in getting students through Young Canada Works.
Okay.
And last year I was unsuccessul, and I didn't get any feedback as to why we weren't granted any students. And I'd really like to, and I've questioned them a few times, and they said they'd get back to me, but never did.
So when you say students, do you mean that you weren't able to hire anyone, or you didn't get funding?
We did not get funding. We were declined from
okay.
CMA.
I know we are working on feedback reports currently. Did you want to message me directly actually and just let me know, and I can see if I can find out?
Sure, that would be awesome, because I kind of asked a few times and they kept saying, no, later. And now it's time to get a new application in, and I don't know what was wrong with our last one. So just message it to, Al Petra.
Yes, please. Yeah, you can message me directly. May I ask what your organization is, and I can have a quick look into it?
Yeah, it's the Cowichan Wooden Boat Society.
Oh, okay. And this was for last year? Was it HO then?
That's a good question. When you mentioned those two streams, I'm not 100% sure what stream we did.
Okay. I will look into that.
Through.
But yes, please, if you wanted to email me as well, just to make sure I have that in writing, that would be very helpful.
Okay, thank you so much, because I'd really like to know before I send off a new application, because I didn't know what was wrong.
And we're hoping to have another session, I think I mentioned earlier, in January on more specifics on the actual application process. So that might also be helpful. But let's see.
So was it common last season that there was requests declined?
It happens every year, so it's a fairly competitive program. So the funding is never guaranteed.
That makes me feel better.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely. We unfortunately do have to decline some positions just because, or some requests, I should say.
Okay. All right.
So sorry, but I will look into it more specifically.
Okay.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you. And I see Lillian. I'm just going in the order. I think I just unmuted Lillian. Did you still have a question?
Yes, I do.
Hi.
We've never applied for this grant before.
Okay.
So I don't know what's considered full-time with Canada Summer Jobs, where we've applied before. It was 35 hours a week. Is there a criteria here for number of hours in a week?
I believe it's considered 30 hours a week.
Okay. And can we still apply for our Canada Summer Jobs grant also in case we don't get accepted for this one?
Yes, yeah, you definitely can. But you can also combine funding as long as it doesn't exceed the cost of the position. So
I see.
So
we
that
can hire one student, and this pays up to 85%. The other one would pay the other 15%.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. It depends on what the next. Yes. So whatever our percentage is, it might depend. So if you let us know that you get, say, X dollars from CSJ, then we would adjust our funding level. So I don't think you would get the maximum funding from both of them. But we would just have to confirm that when you get through the process. So have you done Young Canada Works previously?
No, I haven't.
So one of the forms that you fill out during the process, you have to let us know if you are expecting funding from any other sources. So once you let us know, and I think you can say that during the application process as well. But once we're aware, we want to confirm the amount, and we just want to make sure that you're not being overfunded. So
that makes total sense.
Okay.
We usually hire 2 students, and we also have a line on our 2 students for next year, which is kind of amazing. Can we fund one with one of the grants and one with the other? Do we still have to tell you then that we're funding with the other one?
No, if they are separate positions.
Okay.
But again, it has to be open recruitment. So I'm not sure if you have a particular person in mind, but it has to be, you can't just hire the person and say that it was open recruitment. So you have to go through the recruitment process. So you can't hire someone, say, like that was at your organization previously. You'd have to post the position, consider other people.
Okay. No, I can handle that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, you can have people do have CSJ students as well as Young Canada Works. They can be separate. You can combine the funding, but we just have to know the amount so that we're adjusting our funding accordingly.
Okay. All right. That sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think Taylor is next in my list. Taylor, are you able to speak?
Okay, hi.
Hi.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, can you tell me the relationship, if there is one, between Young Canada Works and Canada Summer Jobs?
They're both federal funding, but they're not related in any other way.
Okay. So we used Canada Summer Jobs previously at 100% funding.
Right.
So what you're saying is the Youth Canada Works is maximum of 85% funding.
It depends on the year. So yeah, sorry, that it varies according to whatever Canadian Heritage says.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So the determination of the percentage of funding, if I'm getting it correctly, seems as if it might be decided on a case-by-case basis.
Well, Canadian Heritage determines the maximum percentage.
So if an application is approved, is it automatically at maximum at 85?
No, not necessarily. So what we do is we look at the budget that you've submitted. So whenever you do your application, you submit a budget. So you tell us the percentage that you want funded, and then if you're approved, we send you a budget, and then you approve that.
Okay.
So yeah, it is sort of a case by case basis.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
But at the same time, Canadian Heritage sets the maximum, and that's not like a maximum per case. It's a maximum for all Young Canada Works.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. And I think, I'm so sorry if I'm missing anyone, but Bonnie, it looks like Bonnie is next.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Our museum's in a small town, but it's a big museum. And
Okay.
we were wondering, talking about travel expenses, it would be over 120 kilometers for someone, for instance, to travel from the city to our museum to go to work. Is that a daily compensation rate?
No, unfortunately, it is for one time. So move to and then move back.
Goes back. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be. I mean, yeah, it's unfortunately not. Occasionally, like if you wanted to provide them with, I don't know if there's a pass, but is that gas? I'm assuming there's not like a ferry or anything.
Well, no, we're about 63 kilometers from a big city.
Oh, okay.
We're in
Yeah.
a town of 360 people, so we're trying to think of ways to entice someone to talk about.
Yeah, that is always, honestly, yeah, that's always a hard issue, especially if there's not a lot of accommodation room in your town for them to stay.
Mhm.
It's a struggle. But yeah, if you wanted to contact me directly, or if you have any questions when you're applying, we might be able to help out with that. I don't know if there is any accommodation in your town. What town are you in?
We're in Mossbank, which is south of Moose Jaw,
Oh, okay.
and there's a
I'm not-
very, very low vacancy rate, like if any,
Yeah, yeah.
available for rent right now. So,
Dear.
but we'll see. Maybe
Okay.
somebody going to school used to live here, for instance. We're working on that.
Okay. Well, let us know. Hopefully we might be able to help you somehow.
Okay, thank you.
With suggestions or anything. Thank you. And I don't think I've had Karina yet, so I've just unmuted Karina, so you should be able to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can. How are you?
Okay, great. Good, thanks. So I also have not applied for Young Canada Works
did.
before, but just have a question because we have a number of students
Plug it in. Easy.
at our institution that they're in like a program called knowledge integration, and then they do learn about a lot of museum skills. But question, if they have just graduated from post-secondary, are they still eligible, or do they have to go back, like they have to be going back to post-secondary in September?
For the building careers.
Yes. Yeah, the building
for
careers.
for building careers and heritage, there is no requirement to be returning to school. So that's just for the
Okay.
heritage organization stream.
Okay, great. I think I probably just missed that.
That's okay.
But
Yeah,
wanted to ask. Yeah.
it's a lot of details. Yeah. Was that your only question?
Yeah, I think you've answered all the other ones with other people. So thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Was there anyone that I have missed? I'm so sorry. I'm just going through the list. I don't think so. I just see 4 questions. No. Okay. So seeing no more questions, I'll just put my email back in the chat just in case it was missed. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. We are also planning another presentation in January, so that will be posted on our website and all of our social media. So please feel free, and I'll just put all of our social media is at the same name. So I'm just going to post that here. So you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you to Cynthia for transcribing or interpreting. And thank you for everyone for your attendance, and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.